Okay, so what happens is most Tejano families end up selling their land to Americans at very, very bargain basement prices. If you're being kicked out of Nacogdoches and you're going to take whatever you can for your land, otherwise you're going to get nothing for it, which Anglos would have been quite happy with. Remember, there's almost no protections for Tejanos in post 1836 Texas, especially in East Texas. Most Americans are really happy to see these folks go. They don't trust them. They see them as racially inferior. And so what you have is Tejanos take what they can get, and they get very little for the land that they had owned either during the Spanish period or the Mexican period. Over a million acres, over a million acres changed hands from Tejano to Anglo between 1837 and 1842. I'll say it again, a million acres in the 5 years after the Texas Revolution. And it's not because Tejanos are thrilled that Americans are coming into Texas and they're going, I can sell you land. This is done under duress. It's done under intimidation. It's done under very, very shady court proceedings. It's basically land theft that just has the merest fig leaf of legality covering it. So what you have in short is a massive transfer of land from Tejanos to Americans in the period after the Texas Revolution. At the same time as many Americans are coming into Texas and they're viewing Tejanos as racially inferior, as the perpetrators of the violence of the Texas Revolution. So what I'm really trying to get to you is just how overnight things changed so much for the worse for Tejanos. Even Tejanos that had supported the Texas Revolution, they changed for the reverse almost overnight and very dramatically, very dramatically. Another figure, and I'm not going to test you on this, but just get a sense of what's going on. In 1840, by 1846, 10 years after the Revolution, there had been 49 ranches belonged to Tejano families during the Mexican period. Okay, let me start there. So around Goliad, I'm being very unclear, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to keep the thing rolling, but I'm going to start this point again. Around Goliad, there were 49 ranchos that were owned by Tejanos, that this land had been granted them during the Spanish or the Mexican period. So 49 ranches owned by Tejanos around Goliad. By 1846, 10 years after the Texas Revolution, 40 of these ranches were in Anglo hands. So 40 of the 49 changed hands from Tejano to Anglo, often under very intense and violent and illegal circumstances. Um, so what you have is many Tejanos are just leaving East Texas, even Goliad, which was, that was one of the few legacies of Spanish Texas, and they're being forced out there, and many will move to the border region. Um, Now, the border region is safe for them, the Rio Grande border region, because although Texas claimed the Rio Grande, specifically Laredo, as part of the Republic of Texas, the Republic of Texas was too weak to really realize that claim. And so Laredo, in particular, it stays Mexican during the Republic of Texas. Laredo is not part of the Republic of Texas. It's still part of Mexico during this period. It's not going to become part of Texas until the Mexican-American War of 1848. Okay, so land theft. Now, the exemplary figure in this is Juan Seguin. Juan Seguin tells the story. His story really tells the larger story of Tejanos in Texas post 1836 and even before. So Juan Seguin he had been born in San Antonio. His family had been in San Antonio for generations. They were large landholders, a highly respected family in San Antonio. He was born in 1806 to a very well-established Tejano family. And as you should know by now, his family gets involved in the Mexican Revolution of 1813. They leave San Antonio, then they come back. Once again becomes very close friends with Stephen F. Austin, and once again becomes a strong critic of Santa Anna when Santa Anna becomes a dictator. And once again fights in the Texas Revolution. The only reason he's not killed at the Alamo is he's asked to leave to bring troops, which he can't do. It's not his fault. The folks at Goliad just didn't know what they were doing. Once again, and some of his crew in a fight very bravely at San Jacinto, they actually had to wear special hats with feathers in them, so they wouldn't be mistaken for Mexican soldiers and murdered. Because remember, there's that huge massacre after San Jacinto. Um, Sam Houston was actually quite reluctant to have Juan Seguin fight at San Jacinto. He thought his life was in danger not by the Mexican army but by the Texas army. But Seguin insists, and he fights very bravely at San Jacinto. Um, and the Seguin family had been very closely allied with Stephen F. Austin. And after the Texas Revolution, once again, when Sam Houston becomes president of Texas, he is appointed the provisional mayor of San Antonio. And I think I talked about this in an earlier podcast or in a lecture, but I'll say it again. Um, he's the one that buried the bones, or the remains, I should say, of the Alamo defenders. Their bodies were burned by Santa Anna after the massacre. Um, and Seguin is the one that comes back to San Antonio as the alcalde after the Texas Revolution, and this shows the high esteem that Sam Houston saw him in, and he's the one that does the funeral rites, presides over the funeral or the burial or the internment of these bones, and he delivers a very, very moving speech about his brothers, his revolutionary brothers, and how they fought together against tyranny. And one of the interesting quirks about this speech is it was in Spanish because Seguin couldn't speak English. It just shows the complexities of post 1836 Texas politics. Once again, he serves in the Senate of the Texas Republic, which shows that he still had some clout among Anglos. He was elected from the San Antonio area. He serves until 1840. He was also chairman of the Committee of Military Affairs, so there's some respect for him, some uh, residual respect for him as an ally to Anglos in the Texas government. Um, One of his achievements was that he convinced the Texas Congress that any laws that were passed had to be printed in both Spanish and English, because he was aware of the problem that Tejanos had. They couldn't read English, most of them. And again, why would they read English? They lived in Mexico their whole lives. Seguin himself never learned to speak English. Um, Seguin comes back and he becomes the mayor of San Antonio after serving in the Texas government. And I'll talk about his experience instead of rushing it in the next podcast.